everybody, and welcome back to the Positive Male Role Model Podcast. I've run out of jokes that rhyme with and incorporate my name, but I'm still your host, Austin, and today we're running back the Austin rant. I really enjoyed making the last episode. It and happiness are actually my personal favorites, by the way. As we're cresting on our sixth episode, just want to do a little housekeeping meta commentary, as I am prone to do in my real life. So I'll skip ahead like 3 minutes if you want to get to your regularly scheduled content. All this will be in the podcast notes, but we moving. We made a YouTube page and an Instagram account. Instagram accounts can announce the new episodes. YouTube page will give a bit of a visual element to my little soliloquies here. Every background of those YouTube videos that are going to be straight ports of the entire podcast over a background, going to be a different pretty shot I took on my travels and vacations over the years. I'm a little bit of a photography buff, what can I say? Scenery spark joy in my brain, must be captured pixel for pixel. Also, bringing in some of my favorite personal hobbies into the podcast this episode. I've created a companion Spotify playlist for this episode if you're looking for new music. Through the link to that bad boy in the podcast notes too. The Pim Rim cinematic universe is slowly expanding, and unlike the regular universe, slow eat death doesn't exist here. Now is a great time to tell you guys more about my vision for this here thing though. I'm trying to do something a little different than what most people do on podcasts. Instead of it being like a deluge of episodic, one use real time content that's responding to current events live, this podcast is designed to be replayed. That doesn't mean I may not move to doing stuff like that one day, but for now, I'm really creating YouTube videos without video on multiple platforms as opposed to being a talking head. One day, long in the future, I'll have made enough episodes on enough specific situations and topics that this will serve as a repository of advice for a wide range of issues people often face. And it'll even be something you could shoot to another person if you know that they're dealing with something that I've talked about here. Maybe even one day if I have a kid, they can listen to this growing up and outsource some of that parenting in advance. But yeah, the universe is expanding. At some point, I'm aware this is probably going to catch fire. It's growing pretty steadily right now, but if there's one thing I've learned in my life, it's that if you keep pushing all the right buttons long enough, consistently enough, you can change the game. So enjoy this little time we have right now with the podcast, me and you, whoever's listening. Where everybody listening to this episode as of the day of its release is in like a secret recurring underground rave that nobody knows the location to yet. You realize how early you got in on the ground on this podcast before it blows up, everybody finds out about it? It's like watching season 1 of Game of Thrones, like the trailer, and I promise I'm not going to jump the shark that bad. I won't hurt you like they hurt you. Your emotional investment will continue to return solid dividends. Speaking of which, feel free to share this with your friends now. I've kept it under wraps for long enough, and I've been proud of what I've made here. Proud enough to be able to let other people in on it now. But yeah, so the topic of today's episode is emotional resilience and grit. The ability to take a punch and keep going. To keep your mental in the game even when life feels like it's spiraling. When holding on takes all you got. So as per usual, here's your study/article. This one comes by way of Professor of Psychology Angela Duckworth. So what is grit, and how does it relate to Duckworth's research? Well, Duckworth's work is part of a growing area of psychology research focused on what are loosely called non-cognitive skills. The goal is to identify and measure the various skills and traits other than intelligence that contribute to human development and success. Duckworth has developed a test called the Grit Scale. You rate yourself on a series of 8 to 12 items. 2 examples. I have overcome setbacks to conquer an important challenge, and setbacks don't discourage me. It's entirely self-reported, so you could game the test. And yet, what Duckworth has found is that a person's grit score is highly predictive of achievement under challenging circumstances. At the elite United States Military Academy West Point, a cadet's grit score was the best predictor of success in the rigorous summer training program known as the Beast Barracks. Grit mattered more than intelligence, leadership ability, or physical fitness. Grit is sticking with things over the very long term until you master them, Duckworth writes. She observed that the gritty individual approaches achievement as a marathon. His or her advantage is stamina. At the Scripps National Spelling Bee, the grittiest contestants were the most likely to advance to the finals, at least in part because they studied longer, not because they were smarter or were better spellers. Duckworth's research suggests that when it comes to high achievement, grit may be as essential as intelligence. That's a significant finding because for a long time, intelligence was considered the key to success. In her book, she lays out that skill is equal to effort times talent. Achievement is equal to effort times skill. So yeah, as per usual, notes on that, where to find it, the article, and everything are all going to be in the podcast notes. Pop on down there if you want to find it. So, this topic, I had a college professor I really loved who talked about this in his entrepreneurship class once. It's the thing that followed me the most. So, shout out to the king of grit, wherever he is out there. Life is like a 12-round boxing match. I've discovered I'm elite at not getting knocked out. I might get knocked down, but I'm getting back up and battling back. That's why my favorite trope in movies is the hero getting his butt kicked instead of having an invincible main character buff the entire time. Way more realistic when the hero gets stomped out in his third fight of the movie just to do a brutal climb back arc where he wins at the end. That's why some of my favorite movies are Dark Knight Rises and Infinity War, by the way. I'm a sucker for a gut punch to the hero, but he battles back to win in the end. But yeah, man, so what do I think of all this? I think this generation is hurt, man. I think we've seen some depressing stuff, taken a lot of big hits, and the scars of those hits over the years has left a lot of us struggling with staying mentally resilient. Very susceptible to getting knocked down again, you know? The older generations used to make jokes about us as being snowflakes, but I think they smelled smoke and improperly identified the presence of fire. At all the levels of education and competition I've gone through over the years, I've seen one archetype of character a lot. The technical savant, next level performer, studier, knows all you could know from reading the book about it, but very emotionally susceptible to collapse. It's not that we're snowflakes who can't handle the pressure in this generation. You got to think about it from a more empathetic perspective to the emotions a lot of us felt growing up. We've lived through three tragedies before many of us ever even turned 30. 9/11, a weight crash, COVID. We've watched student debt skyrocket, prices skyrocket, wages remain stagnant for long periods of time when pegged to inflation rather than a flat dollar amount. It's that we've been rapidly watching the bargain that life offered each generation before us rapidly get worse and worse. Work hard and you'll be happy. Things will be affordable. Taking the standard path you were told to take growing up will pay off more than anything else. So, what I'm trying to say is that maybe we're a bit of a traumatized generation in some ways, more so than the immediate last generations before us over the last 50 to 60 years. So, chill on the whole, but you guys didn't go through World War II. What are you complaining about? Criticism. We got knocked down a lot, very hard, at a young age. A lot of us were raised by the internet instead of parents who had the time to spend with us due to how much they worked. And that's becoming an increasingly more common thing. We're aware of climate change and its increasing importance. Oil companies and oil dependent nations are transitioning towards renewable energies. If you're really wondering how acknowledged that is, people who make a lot more money than you and I are sitting in a boardroom acknowledging the need to diversify their offerings vis-a-vis the climate crisis. We were sold a dream from a young age about what life would be like growing up based off of the experiences of those who came before us. And we're very, very angry that we're watching that dream die before our very eyes, even though we put the work in for it and did everything we were told to do, with the feeling at the same time as we watch it die that there's nothing we can do about it. Our future was pillaged, and we saw no returns on that Gerber baby bank account that parents emptied when they needed some spare cash right before you turned 18. So I'm saying this generation was born into a world where the world around them and the opportunities within it slowly declined, and many felt like there was nothing they could do about that. Like there's been a specter of pessimism when you experience that type of stuff over a while. A dark cloud that's hung around our view of the future. A feeling that you've been shortchanged. A feeling of deep unfairness. Query if that may be for good reason. That's sad, man. That's existentially depressing. Now add in the series of specific idiosyncratic life experiences one has over a lifetime of these things, and the life events you've experienced that probably never happened but for these greater overarching tragedies. Your quarantine situation and COVID, parents may be losing a job in the '08 crisis, and the ripple effect of having to move or being on hard financial times. These moments in national or international history play out in individual people's stories, making some of our greatest traumatic defining moments a function of grander, overarching, societal context post-memorable historic tragedy. I've had this thought for a long time. Everyone is maybe like one or two safety nets away from falling through the cracks. These types of events are safety net cutters, and all at a young age as you're trying to figure out how the world works. How the world works appears to be that once every few years, everything just randomly falls apart, and things are charting towards falling apart more and more often as the years go by. You should have seen it coming the moment we lost Harambe. And personally, I actually think this is a big part of the reason why this generation really struggles with avoidance, more so than past generations, though I definitely don't think this is the only answer. I've read a lot of articles on this, I might make a future episode about it, but take my learned helplessness concept from episodes ago. It's an avoidance of aversive stimuli when you think the outcome is predetermined. why would you think the outcome is predetermined if each new situation is a new situation? Unless you've experienced so many aversive stimuli and situations in the past that it colors your ability to perceive whether this new situation you find yourself in will end similarly to a bad result in the past of something somewhat related, or maybe this can be a situation that works out wonderful in the future. Which is it? Who knows in the moment when you're super overwhelmed? The bigger and more stressful and anxiety inducing the situation is, the harder it becomes to deal with the weight of the situation, not even counting actually executing the task underneath those mental demands. What happens if the task is one that doing is actually rather straightforward, but the anticipatory anxiety, fear of what it will look like to actually try, to feel like if you fail, what if that's too high for one to overcome, even if the fear tapers off rapidly after the process has actually begun? Query, is that self-sabotage to avoid things that have a pretty good chance of working out for you? Or maybe it's more about time and place and an internal feeling that you're ready to bear the risk of however it turns out nonetheless, the bedrock of confidence. But it's hard for everyone to know what's up from down sometimes. Even if you've accomplished a lot, gotten a ton of degrees, had the best grades, make a ton of money, have a great job, have a great relationship on paper, the individual living this generation, the run-of-the-mill millennial Gen Z tweener, has a great resume, and a lot of us are very unhappy. Like, I just made a dope new profile picture of me in some shades next to a waterfall on vacation, but in reality, I'm just sad in Scandinavia. Check that one out in the playlist, by the way. So, what happens when your life is on paper amazing, but it feels miserable? That's why I think this generation also really resonates with issues like imposter syndrome, or depersonalization, or derealization. Because even if I cured cancer at 17, graduated Yale at 20, and worked at the United Nations at 22, I feel like I couldn't even flip a burger right now in the middle of a depressive time. Like, I'm going to give you guys an insane statistic. Did you know approximately 50% of the population undergoes at least one transient episode of depersonalization or derealization in their lifetimes? When this stuff was happening to me, I felt like I was in a magical realism novel, watching your own life through a glass, not identifying with who you are, not remembering what I've survived and identifying with the strength that comes from facing some of these things, feeling like an emotional and mental paper tiger. So I can see how for some people in this generation, it's just like, why try it all? Why not just lie flat and give up? What I do doesn't make a difference. Who cares what I do? So why not just turn to my vices? Why not just self-sabotage? Why not put in the minimal effort? Why try to improve myself? Well, okay, now we've gotten rather philosophical, but I think it's the type of struggle that exists at highest strength when you're not doing things, when you're not engaged with life, when you're staying inside more, when you're socially less connected, when you're not in a fulfilling social circle, without a safety net, doom scrolling social media more, buffeted by the cacophony of thoughts in your own mind. When you were going outside and doing things every once in a while that you know spark joy, meeting old friends, making new ones, engaging in your hobbies, you get something I like to call the felt experience momentum buff. The philosophical inquiries tend to resolve themselves under the presence of seeing how the situation you've overthought in the abstract 100 times in your bedroom actually plays out in practice, and you start to feel better as you do it. Maybe we are all on a hurling space rock for an indefinite amount of time and constantly question what any of this means at 1 a.m. But then you go outside the next day instead of staying in depressed. Next thing you know, it's 11 a.m. on a Saturday now, and I'm really enjoying this walk through the woods. The sunrise was gorgeous this morning. I'm going to hit a concert tonight and sleep in tomorrow morning a little extra. This coffee do be tasted pretty good this morning. Does it smell like it might drizzle a little later? My best friend is going to graduate grad school in a couple months. That dog I saw outside of Chipotle was so cute. I've never seen a husky Alaskan Shiba Inu mix before. That's like crazy. I'm just a big man for objective truth. I care about seeing things as they actually are as much as possible, not through the lens of my historic coping mechanisms, and not through the lens of how much the paintings of the past have hurt, to a point where I'm actively letting them color my future. So yeah, I think some things that may help. Trying to figure out who you are, your identity, what things make you happy, making a list of them, what routines allow you to be your healthiest. I see healthy routines, good social connections, friends you can have deep emotional connections with, as a steadying, buoyant force for your boat on the ocean of life. Sometimes life throws you some nasty headwinds. These routines can help you be more mentally and emotionally stable as your boat gets tossed about by the waves. Having those things that help you remember who you are, activities, people, routines. It's like Capsize Guard. And I truly believe life is a series of calm, tranquil water periods intermixed with episodic games of storm survival. If you can survive the temporary storm, hold on before you capsize just long enough for it to end, it makes those next calm, tranquil periods easier to appreciate and enjoy, and stops you from sinking under the waves until you hopefully one day wash ashore. There will always be money in a steady, consistent hand. Bored man gets paid, as they say. If you're good at doing all the little things right and you can keep the unforced errors low, you'd be surprised how far you can go. It's not about what happens to you, it's about how you navigate it and what meaning you take from it. Resist the urge to stay chained in the pessimistic version of Plato's cave. The dude who left that cave might have died, or he might have found stuff so enjoyable in this big optimistic world that he never wanted to come back, and that's why you haven't heard from him since. So, yeah, what am I saying here? Self actualization? I'm saying appreciation. I'm saying express gratitude. I'm saying get close to your friends. I'm saying these are the parts of the human experience that I think if you are not actively pushing yourself to focus on, enjoy, and be present with, it's very easy to lose sight of these things and to really struggle. So, when it comes to this 12-round prize fight that we call life, all I'm really trying to say is don't stay down on the ground forever. Even if, you got knocked down a couple times, especially early on in the game, sometimes you just got to see how things develop. Sometimes you got to struggle for a little bit, even when it doesn't seem like things are getting better, because at the end of the day, you just want to see things go well. So yeah, that's my thought. That's all I have to say today. Thank you guys for listening. Super geeked for more episodes. I think Wednesday is becoming a good day for this. So we'll see how this shakes out. Anyway, all right. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.